Welcome to Business Beyond the Game. I'm Eric Jackson from Sportico, and I'm joined today by entrepreneur, thought leader, and former NFL star Ricky Williams. Thanks for joining us today, Ricky. How are you, man?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. And now you're already more than a year into your cannabis lifestyle brand, Heisman. You're already in half a dozen markets already. What was the main motivation for you behind starting Heisman?
I felt like we had a story to tell. Specifically when I was playing football and going through all my stuff with cannabis, there were very few people out there that were saying anything positive about cannabis,
Hmm.
and so I had to do all the hard work myself to find the truth. And so I'm just sharing the experience with people because it's really changed my life in dynamic ways. As a professional football player, I was always trying to be better and better and better. And it carried through as a person, always trying to be better and better and better. But there were certain things about myself that I didn't understand. Well, why was I doing that? Why did I make that choice?
Hmm.
And I noticed when I started smoking, I got greater insight into those parts of myself.
Hmm.
And that self-knowledge helped me to make better choices, and the quality of my life continue to improve. And that's the opposite of what we learned about cannabis.
Right. Would you say this is your favorite venture that you've done so far?
I don't do things that I'm not passionate about,
Yeah.
and so everything is kind of my favorite, or I don't do it.
Hmm.
Um, and that's kind of the other part of the message, is that the breaking the stigma, beating the taboo and all that stuff. It's like we talk about it in the industry, but my story is someone who actually had to literally live through it, you
Hmm.
know, like in front of the stage of the whole country. Um, and it's hopefully it's obvious to people that have come out on the other side. And I think there's an empowering message in that story because we all have places in our life where there's something about us that other people don't understand or don't get, and so we hide it. Where we know if we could actually be more of that, right, our life will be better. And so that's another part of this is sparking greatness is first going in and getting to know yourself, but two, having the courage to come out and be that.
I know, and you've been an advocate for medical cannabis for years now, almost continuing this journey, right? That you started years ago. How do you think this brand will like continue to just break down those barriers of just the sports world and the cannabis industry? It still seems like separated sometimes, but I'm kind of
Well, I say
curious.
long term, if we look at the long term, we look in the future. I think most people that have spent any time studying cannabis and the regulations are convinced that it's here to stay. And so as we move into the future, it's going to be less about breaking down all the barriers because they're going to eventually come down. And next is going to be moving forward of how do we integrate cannabis into our lives.
Mm,
We've been in kind of a dark ages of cannabis where it was illegal, and even people that were doing it were hiding it.
right.
And we see in legal markets, right, billboards everywhere. As we move into the future, cannabis is going to be a part of what it means to be an American,
Mm.
and it's still new. And where are we going to end up? And so part of this brand is doing our part to make sure we end up in an uplifting, empowering, enlightening direction.
Right. And Ricky, I was like reading about different studies that kind of just showed disparity, right? Of black and brown people just being awarded licenses and so on. I'm just kind of curious your thoughts on just, your plan. Maybe it's early now, but your plan just to kind of, hopefully create just that true equity, I guess, in the industry.
Yeah, it's commendable. It's commendable what people are attempting to do, and I think it's just the beginning. But equity isn't putting people in situations where they have opportunity and not the skills and the support to capitalize on those
Mm,
opportunities. And I
mm,
think that there's way too much of that happening right now. I think equity always has to start with opportunity and education, you know and I think opportunities are there, but a lot of the brown and black people are behind in the educational opportunities.
mm.
And so, like, what we plan to do is create educational opportunities, share what we're learning about business, about the industry, about cannabis with people who are following in our footsteps.
Yeah, I know. I'm curious how interested are you in partnering with player unions of the major US pro leagues, kind of getting really, injecting yourself literally inside of that ecosystem.
Well, it's not even for my own personal benefit. It's for the benefit of all. Because I was a pioneer in this arena, I have more experience than most other people.
Right.
And so I think that the time and experience I've had, I think I can provide a lot of insight that can appreciate both the player side and also the game side, because for this to work, we have to find ways to use it in constructive ways that empower players to be better humans, better football players, better athletes, better whatever they're doing.
Yeah, no, and you faced scrutiny during your career for using cannabis. How do you think the conversation has just changed, Ricky, in terms of how the public views athletes who use now? It seems like, in the last 10 years, it seems to have changed a bit.
Yeah, I think the change has been initiated by the players. I talked to D. Smith, head of NFL Players Union, and he said the big thing is about switching the conversation from a substance abuse to a conversation of wellness. And I think once the players have taken that stance and they're starting to speak about it more that way, it forces the fans to listen. And it's not just the players, right? Those conversations are going on all over the country. I remember I ran into Coach Max Brown a couple of years ago, and he had this big smile on his face, and he said, "You were right all along." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "My brother, suffering from cancer, and the one thing that's given him relief has been cannabis." And so people are starting to realize that it's not a substance of abuse issue as much as it's a health and wellness issue.
Do you ever feel like I told you so? You know what I mean? Because from all the scrutiny before and kind of coming now to the surface, like, how do you just feel?
I don't, because I didn't know. I didn't know either. We all have hunches. Okay, we all have hunches. But until we have the courage to pursue those hunches and see what's underneath them, we don't know. And so I found out like everyone else. I just found out quicker because I went first. But we all come from the same place. We're all told it was bad. Okay, some of us were lucky. We had hippie parents, and they didn't tell us it was bad. But most of us, right? We had adults telling us it was bad, and then we had our own experiences, and we were like, wait a minute, right? And some of us, right, had bad experiences, and we're like, okay, I get it. But some of us had good experiences, and we kept on going with it. And I'm just one of those people. I kept on going with it.
I know, and the NFL has recently relaxed the marijuana policies in the last CBA, this latest CBA. Do you think like this should happen years ago, or do you like what took so long in your opinion?
Well, I mean, the NFL is a big business, and if you understand the history of the drug program, it came to protect the reputation of the sports leagues. Because the first time that Maine white America really had like up close and personal experiences with Black people was through professional sports. And so professional sports had to do everything to make the players seem safe. And one of the things they did was they drug tested them. They said, "Hey, we can assure you we're not putting thugs out on the field because we drug test them." Okay. All right. That kind of made sense to some people back then, but it doesn't make sense anymore. And sometimes it's much easier to make regulations and laws and rules than it is to repeal them and change them. But it seems like, the ship has sailed and we're moving in the right direction.
Right. And switching gears a little bit, I'm curious kind of what piece of advice do you give other athletes, especially young ones in the NFL, when it kind of comes to financials? Because I feel like you have a unique perspective when it comes to that.
Yeah, I have a very unique perspective when it comes to that. No, I say that, being able to play this game or whatever game you play or whatever you're doing, right? You have access to resources, and I just say like, that's a responsibility, right? To yourself. So just spend some time and really think, how do you want to use these resources? And then the other thing, and I would try to say it in a way where it was more conversational, is that, resources are limited. You're not going to be able to play this game forever. So make sure, however you're using your resources, that you're getting something of value back. If you like stuff, make sure you're investing in stuff that retains values, right? If you're like me and you more value experiences, okay, make sure you're investing in experiences that are going to carry over and give you be there for you when you're done playing.
Yeah, no, absolutely, for sure. Like, do you feel like you had that early in your career, like
no,
that thought process?
No, I had to earn that. I had to earn that one. I had to earn that one. No, I spent my whole life, chasing a dream that I didn't really know what was important to me outside of chasing the dream. And it wasn't until I started smoking really that I started to be more reflective and ask myself deeper questions and realize what was truly important to me.
I know. And when you think now about how much sports and music are more synonymous than ever, what's your thoughts when you look back on your experience as a client for Masterpiece No Limit? Because now you have QC Sports, and you have Jay Z's Rock Nation, and you have so many others. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that experience and how it relates today.
Well, for me, what I was thinking back then was really about the power in numbers, and that when you have the athletes over here and you have musicians over there, and sometimes we hang out, okay, that's fun for both of us, but it's not really doing anything for the world. And I just imagine if the athletes and the musicians and the actors, if we all got together and put our heads together, we could be a force, you know.
Does it feel good to
Because
see them
it's
together
funny.
now?
It's great. The truth is, and I haven't said this to many people, but one of the reasons I retired from football was football is so small.
Mm.
It's growing now, like they play in London, but especially back then, it was so small. It's big if you think of the United States, but if you think of the whole world and wanting to like be somebody in the world,
Mm.
like football, it's small chunk of the world.
Right.
And there are other things. And an example of what we're talking about now is cannabis. Cannabis is something I can go all around the world. Oh, I've been all around the world, and I can talk about cannabis. You're going to see big smiles,
Right, right. Worldwide, right? Yeah.
Worldwide. I talk about American football. People are like, huh? That game where they put on helmets?
I know. And before I let you go, Ricky, I kind of want to ask you just about your life, previous chapters and upcoming. Like, how do you ultimately want to be remembered? The entrepreneur, the player, all of the above?
It's all of the above, but it's context. I want to be known for being someone that made a difference in the world. And then they say, how did he make a difference through his entrepreneur projects? Okay. Oh, and he was a football player. Wow. Right. And so that other people, when they think of being a professional football player or a professional athlete like I did, it doesn't end with just being a professional athlete, that they can see that they can be whatever they want.
There's more to it than the game, right?
Yeah, exactly. But the game is an important piece. I think of the first half of life is training for the second half, and at least the first, more than the first half of my first half was all football training, and it prepared me to be an entrepreneur. It prepared me to deal with the ups and downs and the bad days and the losses and the fumbles and all that stuff, and just to keep moving.
Any former athletes that really kind of helped you in terms of preparing for that next phase of life, or anyone in particular?
Not so much personally, but there are certain athletes, retired athletes that I looked up to that kept on going after sports that I think really inspire me. Winford Tubbs. I don't know if you know who he is. He played linebacker at the University of Texas and played a couple of years in the NFL. Mm. He's killing it. He's doing way better than he would have done in the NFL outside of the game. But obviously, he's using the same things he learned on the field to go beyond. And I think just people that have been able to make that transition, from sports to making a difference in the world, those are my role models.
Well,
Jim Brown is like number one on my list. When I thought about being a professional football player, I thought of him. Part of it was on the field, but the other part was like, I was a bad man, and who could speak his mind at a time when other African Americans could not.
From a business, cultural, there's a lot. Jim Brown, there's a lot there, right? For sure.
Yes.
Well, Ricky, I appreciate it, and it seems like you've definitely started to dive into that next phase of life, right? So,
I dive into everything I do. So,
well, I appreciate you coming on, man, as always.
Yeah, good talking with you, Eric.